Kevin.
Alright. I'm gonna laugh at that.
What?
Great.
Kevin, are you like, I sound so.
All right, everybody.
Oh my gosh, white.
Welcome back. Today we're going to do the executive and the legislative branch. Okay? Executive branch is made up of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. Okay? The job of the executive branch with regards to laws is to do what? Enforce them. Who makes the laws?
Congress.
Which branch?
Legislative.
Legislative branch, good. Okay. So we have in the executive branch is the President of the United States. Okay. The President will serve a 4-year term. They must be 35 years old. So we see that this has increased. The House is 25, the Senate is 30, the President is 35. Okay? You must be a 14-year resident of the USA. Resident. So you have to have lived in the United States for 14 years and I don't know. I don't know. And you must be a native-born citizen. Okay? So you could be born in the United States, go live somewhere else for 20 years, right? And as long as you come back when you're 21, then you could have those 14 years and then you can be the president, right? As long as you've lived in the country for 14 years. No, it does not have to be consecutive. Okay? So, the way that the president is, let's do the powers of the president. So, powers of the president, okay, they can approve or veto laws. We talked about that yesterday, right? They have that option. They can make treaties, right? So they're allowed to make a treaty with a foreign government. They are allowed to nominate judges to both the federal court and the Supreme Court. They can appoint their cabinet members so they can get their people in. And they are the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. So they are number one. All of these have checks that go along with it, right? To approve or veto a law, if they veto a law, what's the check on vetoing a law? Good. 2/3 of the Congress can override it. What is the check on making a treaty? Senate must approve it. Nominating judges, what's the check? Senate approves it. Appointing cabinet members? Senate approves it, right? And commander-in-chief, you have the military infrastructure in there to do that, okay? So all of these roles of the president, there is a check, okay? The president is elected through the Electoral College. The Electoral College is set up where each state has a certain number of electors. Okay, that consists of your members of Congress. So in Minnesota, how many electoral votes do we have? We have 10. right? We have 8 congressional people. All of them are up for re-election in 2 weeks. We have 2 senators, so you have 10. There are a total of 538 electoral votes. Okay? The reason why there's 538 is because Washington, D.C. gets 3. Okay? So you have 538. Okay? You must have a majority in order to win the presidency. So through that, you must have 270 votes in order to become president. Electoral votes. Okay? If there is a tie, just the box algebra. If there is a tie, the House of Representatives determines who the president is. Okay? And we'll talk about that in class. But, yes. Okay? So, and there was conversation in 2016 where there was concerns that people thought that there could have been a tie, which obviously there was not. Okay? What's that? You will find that out in class. Okay?
What happens when a tie happens?
It goes to the House, and the House of Representatives decides it.
Do they vote or?
Yeah, so they negotiate. So,
It's like a vote.
so for example, then, if you're looking at reasons why the House is important, if there's a tie in the presidency, so like this next election, if there is a tie, you would assume that whoever the House was, whoever's in control of the House, they would pick the Republican or Democrat that would fit them. So that's an important role. Okay? So 538, a majority is 270. So it would be 269, you end up with 538. Okay? Vice President must be a citizen as well. All right? There is a succession of the presidency. So if the president dies, okay, there is an order in which you have it. All right? That goes. So you have the president. You next have the vice president. Okay, that's number 2. Okay, anyone know who's number 3 on the list?
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House. So that's Paul Ryan.
The guy who's head of Senate or the House of Representatives.
The House of the Representatives. So it's the head of the House of Representatives. So that's Paul Ryan. So Speaker of the House is 3. Number 4 is a position called from the Senate, and it would be the. I don't want to write it that way. I'll do it like this. The President pro tempore, which is a weird position really in that it has very little power in the Senate. It's not something that we talk about a lot. It's an elected position within the Senate, so that would be the 4th. And then the 5th is going to be the secretaries in the cabinet in the order from the oldest position that was created to the newest position that was created. So, the Secretary of State would be number 5. And then it would go down to, and I don't think there has been one that has been created since, but I think Homeland Security is the most recent secretary to have been, cabinet position to have been created. So that would be the last person on the list. So, when you see the State of the Union address, okay, in which the president addresses the United States and all of the government is at the is in the Capitol for the speech. What happens is that they have at least one member in the presidential line of succession not there, and they have them in somewhere that they are protected. So if somebody was to blow up the Capitol and kill everybody in our government, there would be somebody in the line of succession that would be able to take over. Okay? There was a Kiefer Sutherland TV show that came out in the last year or so called Designated Survivor. Right. So that's the idea behind it. Yeah.
So if you killed everyone there, somehow you could theoretically overthrow the U.S. government.
Well, the idea being is that you would have somebody in the government that was in the line that would say, I am the person that needs to step up. They would have to rebuild the government. It would obviously be an enormous, it would be hard to fathom what would happen if that occurred if we had every congressperson killed and the president and the vice president. It would be pretty chaotic, but that's the idea behind this.
That's crazy.
Somebody else?
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
So it just ends at one point?
So it goes through all of the cabinet positions. So there are over 20 cabinet positions. So there's a pretty long line that you have there. Okay, we've obviously never gotten past vice president, right? We've gotten to vice president a fair amount of times. We've never gone past the vice president. Okay, yeah.
I was just gonna ask what would happen if you ran out.
If what?
If you ran out of people.
Oh, yeah, it would be
Anarchy.
right. It would be problematic. Originally, and we'll talk about this in class. It was in the vote. Whoever finished first in the vote became president. Whoever finished second became vice president. You can imagine why that's a really bad idea, right? We would have in the United States right now President Donald Trump and Vice President Hillary Clinton, right? So they realized that mistake very quickly and they changed it with an amendment, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But it was in 1796, that's what it was. And so we had different political parties. We had Adams and Jefferson who really did not get along very well with one another. Okay? So the president delivers a State of the Union address every year. He's not required to, but that is a tradition that Washington started. The final thing that's important to note about the president is that he can be impeached. Okay? If the president was to be impeached, the reason why that they can be impeached, that is specifically listed in the Constitution, is that it must be for treason, which means what? Going against your country, okay? Bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors.
High crimes is like.
Like if you murder somebody.
Got it.
Okay? Now, Andrew Johnson. Misdemeanors, yeah. Andrew Johnson was our first president to be impeached. Okay? He was impeached because the Republicans who were in Congress did not feel that he was Republican enough. Okay?
How is that treason?
So, he went in front of the Senate, was tried for his impeachment, and was found not guilty, thus setting the precedent that you may not be impeached for your political views. Okay? So, with Trump, all right, all of the talk about impeachment that you hear, right, Robert Mueller and all this sort of stuff, Trump would not be able to be impeached because you do not like his tax cuts. He would not be able to be impeached if you thought that he was rude or that he was sexist. None of those are grounds for impeachment. If we were to find out in the Mueller probe that he was dealing with Russia before the election, then all of a sudden that would fall under treason probably, and then he could be up for impeachment. But you cannot impeach a president just because you say, I don't like him. Okay? And that's a key piece. Question? Nope. All right. Executive branch. Any questions about that? Yep. Any questions about it? Good. Judicial branch. Okay? The judicial branch, according to the Constitution, is your federal and Supreme Court. What does the judicial branch do with laws? It's their role.
They assess them.
interpret them. Good. All right? So, the role of the Supreme Court. Okay, we'll talk about the Supreme Court basically. If you are a justice of the Supreme Court, as I'm sure we all know from the last couple months, you have a lifetime term. By the way, for the president, 2-term limit. Okay? 2 terms. That was a precedent up until Franklin Roosevelt, who served for 4 terms. After FDR, it became an amendment. Okay? For federal courts and for the Supreme Court, you have a lifetime position. Why is that? Anybody know what that is from the last couple of weeks of Kavanaugh?
Why or just?
Why? What's the purpose of having a lifetime appointment?
They can't back out. Or they can't let go against anything.
They can back out. They can resign.
They could resign. I mean, they can quit, right?
The president can't just like refill them every year.
Nope.
Or
It's not that. Anybody else? The idea behind it is that you're passing judgment on laws. And what the hope is that is you are not going to be influenced politically based on the fact that you have an election coming up. Okay? So once you're put on the court, you can make your decision and know that whatever decision you make, you cannot be voted out for it. Right? So in theory, you are not being pushed by public opinion. Okay? So what we end up seeing historically with the Supreme Court in a lot of situations is that you will find that justices tend to shift their views. And so a president might put in, and this is where we see with Kavanaugh and Gorsuch with Trump, you heard about this, right? And with Kagan and Sotomayor with Obama, you put someone in that you want for Trump to be a super conservative judge. Okay? Kavanaugh right now could go in and say, guess what? I'm actually a bleeding heart liberal. I'm pro-choice. I'm anti-gun. I believe in workers' rights, right? And Trump can't do anything about it, right? So you are protected from your positions, okay? And that's really important to have, okay? So what else can they do? They can declare if a law is constitutional or not. Okay? So Congress passes a law, right? If you disagree with that law, it goes before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court makes the decision whether or not that law is constitutional or not. For example, Brown versus the Board of Education. Okay? School segregation. The courts determined that segregation in schools was illegal. Okay? So that law of segregating schools becomes unconstitutional. The check on this, if the Supreme Court declares a law to be unconstitutional, what is the check there? What can they do? Or what can you do to the Constitution? You can amend it, right? So you can actually change the Constitution. And then if it's in the Constitution, it obviously is the law of the land. Okay? They settle disputes involving the United States. 2 states are not getting along, right? They are going to settle that. Yeah.
So if a justice is like commits treason or something, they still can't be removed?
Yes, so they can be impeached. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay? Yes. So they can settle disputes involving the United States both externally and internally. Okay? So if the United States has an issue with another country, if the United States has an issue within the country itself, either of that. Okay?
And then an off-topic question.
Let's save it then, okay? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Anyone know who that is? Nope. Anybody know who the Chief Justice is? Chief Justice is John Roberts. All right? Chief Justice presides over the impeachment and trials. Okay? So, The House impeaches the president. The Senate tries the impeachment. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court runs the impeachment. Both branches involved in the impeachment of the president if need be. Right? Making it that if you're going to do this, you have to have this taken out. Right? You can be impeached in the same way as the president if you are a Supreme Court justice. Okay, so same impeachment rules are in there. Okay? When we talk about laws in the Constitution, there is only one law that is listed. Okay? Or one illegal act. And that illegal act is treason. That's the only thing that is listed as illegal in the Constitution.
Is this not the judicial branch?
Mm-hmm. So,
Wait,
so treason, what they're saying is they're saying the only law that is put in there, right? There's nothing about you can't murder somebody. There's nothing about you can't steal something.
Wait, the only
Right,
reason
the
they can be impeached is treason?
No, this is just overall. Okay? The only crime that is listed in the Constitution, okay, that they say is illegal is treason. That's it. Everything else is below treason, right? So the Constitution is saying that our most sacred thing that we must protect against is treason. Okay? All right. Very quickly. Article 4. Okay? We've done the legislative branch. Article 4, just a couple other things, okay? Relation of the states. Okay? The Constitution states that rights of states extend to other states. Okay? So, the idea, if you have a driver's license in Minnesota, you have a driver's license in Wisconsin, right? That you have these rights. That you do that. Now, there are things that are problems with that, okay? Where it doesn't necessarily work. So if you commit a crime in one state, the penalty might be more than in another state. To offset that, we also have what's called extradition. So, let's see, I kill Jess. Sorry. All right? And I flee to Wisconsin, where I'm caught in Wisconsin. Minnesota asks for me to be extradited back to Minnesota to stand trial. Wisconsin will do that. They cannot protect me in that state, right? They have to have me come back. Okay? So that means that if you commit a crime, if a state says we need you back to face that crime, right, to be held up, put on trial, they have to send it back. They can't protect them.
What if they don't?
That would be a constitutional crisis, right? Then you are having to go with the federal government coming in to do something to stop that. They would be blatantly breaking federal law, which would be bad. Okay. All right. Questions about that? In that case.